Hi, everybody. I am Donna Reed. I traveled in Up With People 1976 Cast A. And today my guest is Zan Bernhardt. And Zan, I'm going to ask you right from the get-go, because you are not a Mary or a Sue or, somebody else that maybe from a name from a generation. Tell us about your full name. And didn't you have a sister also with a Z name?
I had a sister and a brother with a Z name.
All right. So what's your full name?
My full name is Zandria,
Zandria.
and my mother was just told I was taken a month early. I only weighed 4 pounds, 6 ounces. My mother was told to pick a little girl's name because the heartbeat was fast, and she took the Alex off of Alexandria, and that was it. I had a sister named Zoan and a brother named Zane, who loved his name so much that he went by Bud. So
that is so funny. And after having interviewed Zoe Carroll, who is Alonzo, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I should go back. I don't even remember for sure. And I was just talking to his sister, but there's not that many Z names. And, we know that through generations, there's certain names. I love that story. Alexandria, and she just took Zan.
Yeah.
So clearly you survived and thrived. So
well, you have to survive an unusual name for the first few decades until it finally clicks. And then you're like, I could never be Mary or Sue.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, there's a reason for this.
Yeah.
So, Zan, I only know you because of having connected, kind of because of real estate. So, tell everyone where you live, what you're doing now, and when you traveled in Up With People.
Okay, well, where we live now is in Vista, California, which is considered North County, San Diego. Okay. It's just about 2 miles from Oceanside.
Yeah.
And we had just moved about 10 months ago from Palm Springs, where we were for 3 years, until I was going to melt. And I convinced my husband that we should move down here to more temperate climate. I originally was from Seattle.
Okay.
And I left to travel with Up With People. Literally, I got on a plane from Seattle to JFK the day after my last day of being a junior in high school in Seattle.
Wow.
And so back then we could take our last year, our senior year of high school, on the road while traveling.
All right. So what year was that?
That was June of 1967.
June of 1967. So you must about 10 years older than me. No. Yeah, close. Anyway, and so you say, like, because you were a junior, you and I were just talking beforehand, there was different ways to finish high school. And you said you wanted to check your certificate. And what did your certificate say on it for graduation?
It says Sing Out High School.
Sing Out High School. So it's very possible there's young people who might listen to this who have no idea what that is and what that would mean.
Well, the banner that was behind us on stage said Sing Out.
Okay.
As far as I remember, it didn't say Up With People. It said Sing Out with a big exclamation. So all of our 5 bus loads when we were in the United States all said Sing Out. Wow. And one of the buses was the school bus. So that was the only bus. Talk about feeling like a dinosaur. That was the only bus that was not segregated. We got to boys and girls on the school bus together.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. And so we had, whenever the bus was rolling, we were studying our mailings, which were through the University of Nebraska Extension Division.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so what sorts of classes were you taking? I mean, like at that.
Well, I only had 2 classes to take. I believe it was, I don't even know. I think it was.
It can't have been calculus.
No. It never would have been math for me. But it was some kind of international relations, which was just perfect for, what we were doing.
Right.
And I honestly can't remember, but thankfully I got an A in both of them, or at least passed them, I know.
At least passed them. So you said one of 5 buses. I'm assuming, and I don't know this, that there was only one of those buses that was coming to Seattle, right? Or were all 5 buses, was everybody going together? What was that like?
Well, I saw the Up With People show a year before I joined. I was too young because I was only 16 when I left to travel. And I have no idea how many buses there were when I saw the show, but I flew directly to New York and then had to take, I don't even know. In fact, I was thinking about it before you called. I got to Grand Central Station somehow, which was unbelievable to a little 16-year-old. I was in my homemade dress with musical notes all over it, matching patent leather shoes and purse. I was a dressmaker. And I just remember standing, it's like the song that Linda Blackmore sang in New York City at Grand Central Station, you know, and it was just like a huge city to me, and looking up, and I remember I had to get the train to New Rochelle, New York.
Okay.
And from New Rochelle, I was told that I had to take a taxi to Fort Slocum.
Wow.
Well, I had been raised as an only child by a single mother.
Wow.
And the fear of God was in me for being a single 16-year-old girl traveling. And when I realized that I had gotten to Fort Slocum, I'm in the back of this taxi, and suddenly I thought to myself, there wasn't anything on the top of this car that said taxi. And all the way to Fort Slocum, I just decided that I was going to die. That was it, that I had gotten into a car with a strange man.
Isn't it weird to think
Oh.
though, that like there was something inside you, and I thought about this when I listened to Mia, that you know, hers was the blizzard of 78, and you know, sleeping here on the floor of an airport and then arriving somewhere, and that we as young people just said, okay, I'm going to do this thing and
Yeah.
and it'll be fine, and then you're still freaked out a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I made it to Fort Slocum, and that was all that mattered.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then so then did you do a sort of staging there? I mean, or not, I don't think it's like the stagings that we did in the 70s.
No, it's funny. I don't remember. I know that I was accepted into Cast A. That's what my acceptance letter, which I still have, shows.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't a situation of, there were around 900 of us in Fort Slocum.
Wow.
Because at that time, the casts were 250 to 275 each. That's how many
Wow.
kids were in the cast.
Wow.
And so, but the funny thing is, and I don't know whether we would get to this later, but I did not join for anybody to know that I played the piano. There were no musical auditions of any kind. I think it was just based on recommendations from teachers and, you know, like the minister of your church or whatever. You had to be a good kid. So I had been raised to be a concert pianist.
Oh, wow.
Really against my will, really. I was practicing 5 or 6 hours a day.
Wow.
And the only reason that I was able to travel was because of my fabulous, wonderful stepfather, who I met my mom when I was 14. And he had 5 grown children, all adults. And he was the one who just literally said to my mom, let her go. Let her go and experience some life, something different than sitting at the keyboard 5 hours a day. So I've always credited him.
Many thanks to what that's a very, very cool story. Yeah. All right. So then I've had fun asking people about costumes, and because I worked on costumes for a few years and I was kind of in charge of it on the road, I know my little, 4 or 5 years in the 70s. What were your costumes? What did you wear?
Well, we had the most obnoxious polyester, but they were by Ole Cassini, for crying out loud.
Oh, you at least had good.
Well, those were our traveling outfits. Then we had another polyester shift dress with a jacket. And then our show costumes were the good old linen multicolored jumpers. I mean, they were plain, but you either had red, green, blue, yellow, whatever.
Yellow, okay.
With a white blouse underneath.
So you had a travel costume. So when
we had 2 traveling costumes.
And so you were on the bus, you all like wore those. Is that right?
Yeah, we had to, because the minute we arrived in the city, we had to run off the bus and usually do an assembly.
Wow. So we had assembly costumes, but that was a whole separate gig. We could still wear what we wanted on the buses. The people, the kids that traveled in like 2006, 7, 8, 9 up till, the most recently, that whole concept to them, I don't know if you know of any of the younger people that traveled. And as I mentioned in advance, it's hard to get them to interview because they're all busy. They had things they called a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. And yeah. And so they would say, okay, we're doing this today. Wear your 2s and bring your 4s. That all means something to them. It doesn't to me. And so the whole idea that you wore your assembly costumes on the bus, honestly, I'm trying to picture wearing that stuff all day, because we also had polyester, double knit, hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember that being uncomfortable, but on the school bus, well, my best friend in Up With People was Christine Reeder. And she and I would beeline to the back of the bus because that's where that long seat is.
Oh, yeah.
So then she would sit, we'd have our feet touching in the middle. So, we just got to see
grabbed the back seat.
Yeah, because we would cheat then and look out the side of the windows. I mean, if we were in the Swiss Alps, for God's sake, we weren't going to miss that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
oh, too funny. All right. So, how long, like when you left to go there, did you expect you were going to be there 6 months or a year, or was there a time expectation for what you were doing?
That's an interesting question. I don't ever remember having a timeline on it. Back then, you could travel as long as you wanted to.
That's what I wondered. And did you pay to go?
Nope.
No.
Didn't have to pay a dime. Our parents, my mom would have to send me, like an occasional check for $20. And, even my friends, my Upper People, alumni friends who have so many pictures of their travels. And I'm so jealous because I'm thinking, number one, I didn't have a camera. Number two, where would you get film developed? Because that was back in the day when you had to mail film in an envelope.
Yeah.
So.
And then where would you pick it back up?
Yeah. And just incidentals. I mean, it would be things like so that we could go to the drugstore and get something, but
yeah,
no, we didn't have to pay because we were sponsored by companies and private donations from people. I mean, Toyota and Schick and
all those big names
yeah.
back. Yep. And those of us that traveled in the 70s know how many of those names came forward, for a long, long time,
right
into the future. So how long then did you travel? How long did you stay running around the country and the world?
Well, from June of 67, and my last official Up With People thing was being on the inaugural float for Nixon, which of course at the time was a very heady thing to be doing. There were only I think 60 of us on the float. Nixon had seen a little girl on the campaign trail that held up a sign that said, "Bring us together again."
Wow.
And he decided that Up With People embodied that philosophy. And so we were the lead float on that parade. And it was like, I'm sure you've seen videos, yeah. It was like a gigantic rock. And so that was pretty fun. We froze to death. And
it was January.
It was January. It was freezing. And of course, back then, and you will appreciate this having been in costuming, to hem a skirt to be modest, you had to kneel, remember?
Yeah. And then it had to touch the floor or be a
that hem had to touch the floor.
Right.
You had to be on your knees and the hem had to touch the floor. Well, we girls decided that these fabulous Cassini, beautiful wool capes and tights and boots, that we were not going to, have these long capes. So somehow we got them shorter, and then not realizing, hello, we're up on a float. So thank God we had
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, we had, as far as I recall, nice wool, beautiful dresses on underneath and tights and boots, but we were darn cold, but we wanted to show our legs off.
Because it was the 60s going to the 70s.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. And from there, I went to the Pace building, which was Up With People's building, where Pace magazine was, and Royal Rearmaments building on Flower Street in Los Angeles. And my purpose for them having sent me there was I actually started missing the piano. And so I wanted to start
Oh,
practicing a little bit more. And Christine Reeder's mother, Laurel Reeder, had worked with Herbie a lot, and she was a fabulous pianist. And she was going to work with me in the Pace Building so that I could just feel like I could get my skills up again. And then I was supposed to go to Spain with Cass B, I believe. But I fell and broke my wrist ice skating, and that was the end of that. So
wow.
I decided to stay home, and then Chris's brother, Rick Reeder, had played trumpet in Cass C all across Canada. I never knew him in Up With People. And he lived in the Pace Building while he was going to UCLA studying music. And Laurel Reeder, his mom, Chris's and Rick's mom, said, well, if you come out for the weekend, you can just get a ride with my son, Rick. He works in the Pace Building. And I thought, okay. So Christine had quit traveling, and she had set me up with a blind date because remember, we couldn't date.
Right. There was no
And
dating.
I was so excited. My God, there was going to be a blind date. Well, guess what? The blind date didn't show up.
Oh,
So Rick, home from college, who had just driven me from the Pace Building, literally went ice skating with me as the Mercy date. And I fell on the ice and broke my wrist. And that's apparently when we fell in love.
oh, oh my
The
God.
rest is history, and I did not continue traveling. And we married the next year, and we were married for 18 years. I had a son in 1974.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What an interesting story. I as I go through these and you know see who's married or met their partner on the road, or I'm gonna try to do some interviews with people who re-met at a reunion.
Oh,
Or-
good. Like
yeah,
Sandy,
yeah. There's a few of
Sandy and
them.
Jim.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, so songs. What song or two that you did through the years really has stuck out for you, like pops into your head randomly, or maybe you think is still relevant, sadly, 50 years later?
I know. It's a very interesting comment that you just made, because I think back in the 1960s when we were traveling, we really honestly felt that we were changing the world. We really did. We felt like we were, the more contemporary Up With People song, One to One, we changed the world by giving to each other a
Right.
helping hand along the way. Love that song.
Yeah, me too.
But we felt like we were changing audiences, and we performed in South America. I was in the South American Strike Force. It was all communist.
Mm,
And when you see these communists in these huge venues and coming up afterwards and hugging us, and we felt like we were making a big difference. And so it's very heartbreaking to many of us, and I'm sure probably all of us, that it seems as though a lot of this hatred never went away like we thought, that it's just been
like it was squashed,
it's
right?
been simmering on the stove all this time.
Yeah,
Someone's taking the lid off.
yeah.
But I think, for me personally, obviously Up With People, my Don't Stand Still, Life Is Getting Better Every Day, gee, I'm looking forward to the future. And
You know that there's going to be people who have to Google all those, right?
yeah, of course. But then of course the song that I loved, because I was playing the piano by then, was The World Is Your Hometown. Because
Oh,
there was
that's on one of the old albums.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Joanne Castle, I think, was a honky tonk pianist who was on, I think, oh my God, I really sound old, Lawrence Welk. And so my role,
I'm like, I'm watching children go, who is Lawrence?
what,
Right?
Lawrence Welk?
That's great.
So we traveled with a spinet piano, a console piano, and it was on a dolly. And
Okay.
they rolled me out, and at the time, Glennie was sitting on the piano.
Yeah.
And when it got to the piano solo part of it in the middle, it was honky tonk. And I would hear alternate would be like, da 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 da, and that was my role in that. But that was pretty fun. There was one time they rolled me out and I fell right off the bench. Literally.
Gotta love live stuff. Like I was telling you about the other interview before we started this. I mean, if you're doing it, you're just doing it. And I'm not, we all had those things in our show.
Oh, yeah.
I had interviewed a young man from South Africa who traveled with my son, and one of the first questions he talked about the food he ate and getting sick and getting diarrhea. And I was like, do we want to talk about this? And I'm like, there's probably not a cast that traveled that didn't have that happen, right? So
I remember Ralph Caldwell and we performed at the Indianapolis 500, and Ralph and I had the flu, and we
Oh.
would take turns running off the stage to get sick and then come back. It was hilarious.
Gosh.
Not looking back on it, it was
Right,
hilarious.
right. Oh, it's not fun while it's happening. Of course
No.
not. No. So, do you have a favorite place, Zan, that you traveled that you've returned to, or a couple of favorite?
It would be Italy, 100% hands down. Italy.
Okay, I've got to start interviewing other people because everybody says Italy.
Yeah.
And that is so funny to me. And I am trying to figure out now if it's because you all spent so much time there.
We were there for 3 months.
Right. So, Steve talked about it. Paul talked about it. Everybody's talking about Italy. Zoe talked about it.
Yeah.
We
I
get-
still haven't gotten my husband there. So that's absolutely top on my bucket list to go do that.
to go back.
But I mean, it was phenomenal. And some of the funniest experiences, the first city we arrived, well, get this, we had a chartered flight. I believe it was KLM.
Okay.
And there was no rest on that flight even. Herbie would get on the loudspeaker like the flight attendant, and we were learning phonetically Italian on that flight, on that overnight flight.
Wow.
And lyrics to the song, that kind of thing. And one of the most hilarious things was we learned some key phrases. Well, one of them was dove la gabinetto, which means where's the bathroom? Well, guess what? When you ask that, they then go off 50 miles an hour telling you, and you have no idea what they've said.
As compared to just pointing like over there.
Oh. So we were getting ready for an assembly, and I was with Priscilla Travis, one of my good friends, still one of my good friends, and she played clarinet. Well, she had her clarinet on, the lanyard, and she was holding clarinet. I, of course, didn't have a musical instrument with me. And this man said, basically, sign language, follow me. So we followed him down these stairs into this restroom, which is the way they are in Italy.
Yeah.
And so it was like we girls sometimes do. I looked at Priscilla and I said, go ahead. You have to go more than I do.
Yeah.
So I held her clarinet while she went in, and she came out, took her clarinet. I went in, and it was co-ed. She had not told me it was co-ed. So on one side there was urinals, and on the other side there were stalls. And
The things we learned traveling, right?
No, you're just 16 years old. You just figure I have to go, whatever. And we ran back up those stairs and made it back to the cast in time for the assembly to start.
For the assembly. So I'm down to our last like 9 minutes, but I laugh when I think about that because that you don't know what you don't know. And what's common in one country isn't common in another country, or even a part of our own country, right? Depending on where we were, how we lived, things like that. And I truly gotta laugh about Italy. I'm gonna have to bring somebody on that tells me Sweden or France. I don't know. So what about foods maybe? Was there a food that you were forced to try that you didn't want to try?
Well, the very first meal in Italy we thought was breaded chicken. And as we were leaving, somebody said, that wasn't chicken, that was rabbit.
Oh.
Well, that wasn't pleasant. But I think, I think the hardest thing, and it sounds so nasty for me to say it, when you're in Italy and you're the guest in the home, they give you more food than they give the father as their form of, my God, we've got a celebrity in our home.
Right.
Well, we all gained weight on that 3-month trip. And, of course, now we get together and we say, don't we wish we weighed what we weighed then when we thought
I live in that world, Zan. Yeah.
Hello. But I've got to get to this one thing. We stayed in the girls stayed in a convent, and there were straw beds, and there was a bidet in the bathroom. We'd never seen a bidet. We had no idea what it was for. So we figured it was a great time to wash our clothes. So we soaked our clothes in the bidets, and the nuns came in the next day and they were horrified.
Long as the bidets were clean. I mean,
What were our clothes doing in the bidet? So
that
we,
is
yeah,
funny. Oh, the stories that can be told, right?
yeah. But I mean, as far as food, in fact, I was talking to Linda Blackmore a couple of days ago because we're going to be doing something for the Chicago reunion and we're rehearsing.
Yeah.
On the phone, of course. And I said, do you remember the time you took me across the street to the Carnegie Deli when we performed at the Carnegie Hall for a week? And she said, I do. And I said, it was yogurt and prunes. You introduced me to.
What a combination.
And I love that to this day, but I'd never, ever had that. So, that was pretty funny, but you just learn to eat, obviously, whatever it is that the host family serves you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah. All right. So I've been trying to ask everyone, and I know this is far removed from when you traveled, but we don't know what the next incarnation of Up With People is going to look like, right? There's been some grants that they've received. We assume it's moving forward in some manner. We don't know when host families will be an option again, when people will open up their homes and let people in. Sure. What would you say to probably grandchildren of yours at this point, as compared to children of yours, about this experience, given the fact that they have so many options of what to do now compared to when you traveled? What would you tell a young person thinking about Up With People?
Well, for me, I, of course, wanted the musical aspect of the show. I wanted the mission. I wanted to feel, to me, I felt like the Peace Corps. I felt like we were traveling in the Peace Corps. And the education of it, I took for granted at the time, but looking back, because I never went to college. Okay. And I feel like the education of traveling all over the world, staying in host families' homes, having to be respectful, having to learn enough of the language to get along with your host, to, everything that we had to do, that was the education in itself. But then learning really to, as I say, being raised as an only child, I suddenly had 225 brothers and sisters from all over the world. Right. All different colors of the rainbow. Yep. And one of the guys, Joe Green. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Joe Green.
No,
one of
Texas.
The funniest things, black guy. Yeah. And we would be staging on the show, on the risers. This was before I was playing the piano. And one of the funniest things was, somebody said, and in between the songs, it would black out into the next song so we could change places on the stage. Somebody yelled, just look for Joe Green in a blackout. Someone else yells, you can't see Joe Green in a blackout. And we laughed. I mean, he laughed. It was not a racist thing. Right. It was, it gives me chills. We just loved each other. Didn't matter.
I met Joe, gosh, it's got to be here in Tucson at a reunion at some time or another. I want to say, because he had a company, and maybe he lived in Texas or something like that. Or
he's got a company with another alumni that
travels. Yep. I remember that, and it's been a long time. So
Bill Flowers.
Yes. Yeah. So okay, we're down to 3 minutes.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. I thank you so much. Please, when I share it, if you have friends that you want to tag, please share it so that they can see it too. And if you come across other people that you think, because you all have kind of given me guidance to other people, or if you think there's a story that's interesting, that's how I met Zoe and Ron, to learn their stories. And will you be in Phoenix at all, or are you planning for September, but not the Phoenix one?
I was going to go to Phoenix, but I've had to cancel that. I will be in Chicago.
Okay, yeah. I can't do Chicago, but I'm.
Are you going to be in Chicago?
I'm not. I'm going to be in Europe from July 26th through August 24th. And
that's fabulous.
I know, but I just can't take another trip back to Chicago a couple of weeks later. So I'm hoping to say hi to as many as I can for a day up in Phoenix and go from there. So thank you, Zandria. I love that name, for your time today. It's been great.
Thank you, Donna. I love your interviews. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. And we're going to hope some of the youngsters listen to this and learn a little bit about their roots. All right. I'm going to end it here. Stop the recording.
Thank you.